Hello, and welcome to Sprinklr Coffee Club. I'm Marshall Kirkpatrick, here, your host today, and always at Sprinklr Coffee Club. But we've got a special guest to kick off the show, to help kick off the show, Sprinklr's Chief Marketing and Experience Officer, 𝗔𝗠cie.
Hey, Marshall. I was just walking by, heard you're serving coffee. Thought we could have a little Joe together. There we go. And just wanted to say hello. I'm going to actually watch the show. Amazing job doing Coffee Club. Love it. It's like my favorite thing is it every week now or every 2 weeks?
Yes.
Every week.
Yeah, we're doing it every week.
Amazing. We're actually going to create a special blade on the website. We're going to have a Coffee Club blade on the site. We'll have all the coffee clubs lined up there. And I'm actually here in Portland, which is a bit unusual, but really great, and working with the web design team on pulling that together. So Coffee Club just keeps getting more and more famous and awesome every single week.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I so appreciate your support for Coffee Club and everything we do here at Sprinklr. I'll say it to you and I'll say it to the world. I love my job. I feel so lucky to get to work here, and Brad, your leadership is a really big part of that.
Plus, free coffee. Can't
turn that down,
really. Hey, Sarah, welcome. Sarah, I've been following you for a long time, and it's just a real honor to have you on today. And I don't want to take any more time from her, so let me get going, and I'm going to go in the other room and check it out online.
Thanks for stopping in, Brad.
Thanks, sir. Talk to you soon. Cheers. Bye.
All right, everybody. Let's drink some coffee and talk about the internet. I am really excited to have our guest, Sarah Evans, with us today. You may know her from social media as @PR_SarahEvans. Sarah is an on-camera personality, a blogger, a social media consultant extraordinaire, and has been in the industry leading many of us in our thinking about how to use social media for marketing and communications for many years. And I am really thrilled to be able to spend some time with you today, Sarah.
I feel the same way. Thank you so much for having me on today, Marshall. It is an absolute pleasure. I feel like I should be very honest and forthright that in my homemade cup by my son is water this afternoon. So please don't judge me.
You know, water is one of the ingredients of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a member of the club. That's great. So Sarah, I got to watch 4 or 5 of the interviews you did this past week at the Women in Leadership Conference, and was so impressed with your guests and your interviewing. I bet that exposed you to a big new audience, and I'm sure you made a great impression. But some of our viewers today are probably familiar with your work, and others are learning about your work for the first time. Will you tell us a little bit of your story and how you got to be where you are today?
Sure, I'll try to keep it as concise as possible, but I started in nonprofit communications, the largest healthcare system in Illinois. When I first got out of college, I moved to become a director at a PR agency, and then I became director of communications at a community college in Chicago. And throughout most of that, the latter half of that, I was also consulting in the evening. I had started blogging and talking about social media and the implications on communications, but I was working in the nonprofit sector where they weren't really ready to jump in to a social plan. In fact, at the time I had given out an emerging communications plan, is what I called it, I guess, because we didn't have any words for it yet. And all of that consulting in the background, at some point my husband said, you're going to have to choose one or the other, because you're just not, you can't sustain like this. So I essentially worked myself out of a mainstream job and began consulting. Well, as I began consulting, I was also growing my online platform, and this was before the day of influencers or anything being dubbed influencer. And I found a lot of the companies that hired me said, that's great, you can consult for us, but will you also talk about us? So they wanted me to integrate them into my online voice. And at that point, that's where I jokingly say I became a singer actress, where I had a 2 two-prong approach to how I do business. There's the digital consultant part, and there's the digital correspondent part. They may or may not overlap, and I enjoy both equally. They both get to challenge me and use my brain in different ways. I feel very, very lucky that I essentially got to invent my own job and get to do it. This is actually the 10th year of my company, so it's worked so far, and hopefully I can keep it going.
Oh, congratulations on years.
Thank you.
What an inspiration. What an inspiration. And so how would you describe what your work looks like today? What are some examples, perhaps, of the kinds of work that you're doing?
It really runs the gamut. I have one startup I'm working with right now that's self-funded, but I'm getting ready to help launch them completely. So we're doing their entire communications and digital PR strategy, along with influencer outreach, media outreach. Each one of my clients has a different contracted team. I always say I'm a master collaborator. And because I don't run a full service agency, I actually handpick people that will be the right fit for each client, depending on what they need. I have other clients where we do their social interactions and social listening. And of course, other clients where I get to be the digital correspondent and face, but also behind the scenes get to produce, host, edit things, come up with digital strategy behind amplification. So every client is very nuanced and almost like a one-off. So every time I'm creating a proposal for someone, it feels like a first. I might be able to take bits and pieces from other brands or companies or businesses I've worked with, but one thing remains the same with all of the companies I work with, in that I feel fully invested in them and that we complement one another. I don't work with any company I don't believe in or that I would support publicly. And that's been very important to me throughout my entire career.
Oh, that's wonderful. Integrity is so important. If you are watching the Sprinklr Coffee Club today and have some questions or feedback or thoughts for Sarah or I, please feel free to post them in comments and we will bring your questions into our conversation.
Ask me anything.
Sarah, that's the spirit. That's the spirit. Sarah, it's interesting to hear that you came from the nonprofit world. I did it all, and similar timing probably, where there was a lot of excitement about social media and its potential to change the world and do good and help people who were focused on doing good be even more effective. And I think that there has been some great progress in that, but social media's impact has just become so enormous and so transformative to so many different parts of society. What is it about it that draws you to the field? What do you find most interesting about the field of social media?
The thing that I found most interesting at the beginning is actually a bit different than what I find most interesting now. Now I feel like I have, and many of us who've been in the career a long time have a responsibility. Like, we've been living in the Wild West for the past 12 years. We had all these new tools thrown at us. We're like, wow, opportunity. We can amplify, we can promote, we can connect. We had all these beautiful things, but now we're living in a time where marketing and influencers and aspirational content have kind of run rampant. And we're finding that a lot of research is beginning to show that there are health and mental implications for all of the content people are seeing, the amount of screen time they're spending. And so the past year, I've really been talking about motivational and inspirational content from a PR perspective, being really mindful about what we are putting out, because it became the story of me, the rise of the selfie, all these amazing things we could do to promote ourselves, and so much to a point that everyone has begun sharing their highlights and best ofs and only the really good things. And it's left many of us wondering if we're good enough, if we're fulfilled enough, and if we have what we need. Do I need to buy this? Do I need to buy that? And I believe that we have a mission to actually do a better job with the responsibility of the tools at our disposal.
Wow, that's great. I am so encouraged to hear that, as opposed to the rejection or condemnation of the tools outright. What are some of the things that you've seen that you are excited about in that direction, the responsible uses of these tools?
Well, I love the idea that anything is possible at this point, and that enough people will say we can make a difference in how we put content out, and it might be brand-based content that's extremely positive and outgoing. It's brands like Sprinklr, who you're doing coffee club that you wouldn't have even thought a live show along with this brand. How does that make sense? Well, it gives you a human face, a human connection, an insight into the brand. You're giving access to additional people that your customers can engage with, which I think is very special and very powerful. And frankly, as a customer, I'm more likely to stay a long-term or lifelong customer when I feel completely engaged and the brand is doing things to support me, not just take my money and run with it. So I think we'll see, I'd like to see more of that, and that excites me. I also am really excited about a new age of content. I think we've seen the rise of content marketers and SEO, where people are just writing for search engines, and it's kind of become lackluster with the content that you're reading because it's written in such a prescriptive, almost robotic way at times. And I think we're going to start moving into a better, more content performance optimization world, where we can be real and write with authentic voice, but also still get found in Google and be able to create for customers with more, with just more warmth and care.
Do you think that there is a tension between kind of warmth and care and the rise of automation and automated content creation? Or rise? Tell me about that.
So I am not afraid of technology. I am always happy to be a guinea pig and try things out. Automation and chatbots are very powerful tools and can be used sparingly or for a specific tactic or purpose. I have an example without giving a company's name away. A friend of mine lost his phone after a beer and wine festival in the vehicle of a company that he took a ride share with. And he came to our house. He said, "I lost my phone. I have to get it back." I said, "Great, let's log into the account on my desktop and we'll get it back." Well, he had two-factor authentication turned on his phone. And when we tried to log in, it said, "Great, you can log in. Just enter this number code on your phone. You can get in." He didn't have his phone. He said, "Well, let's just call customer service." And I said, "This company doesn't have customer service you can call." We had gone through and troubleshooted a few different ideas. And then I said, "Oh my gosh, you know what? They follow me on Twitter. Let me just tweet them and see if there's some email address, something I can do to get you access to them." I direct messaged them on Twitter, and immediately someone responded, and I was really excited. I'm like, "We're going to get you the answer. We're going to get you someone, a human." And so we're texting back and forth 3 or 4 times. And after the 4th time, when I gave the issue, the response that came back was the exact same messaging that was on the website. And I said, "Oh, this isn't a person. This is an automatic response or a chatbot responding to me." It didn't solve the problem. We had to come up with a whole nother workaround where I figured out he had to activate an old phone, install the app there, get his phone back, and then get service back on the old phone. But this company does not make it easy for you to get a hold of them, and when you do, you can feel completely taken advantage of by a chatbot when you're in an urgent situation.
Well, it sounds like the chatbot might have been helpful up to the point where it wasn't.
Exactly. It was a very quick FAQ, but this was not one of those opportunities.
Well, I hope that we'll see companies get more sophisticated about knowing when to use automation and when to hand it off to a human.
Yeah, I think it's trial and error, and feedback from customers will really help. Sometimes they don't know what they don't know until it gets into the wild and we have a chance to play around and find what's broken.
That leads naturally into the next thing I wanted to ask you about, Sarah.
Ooh.
Which is about social listening. I know many organizations use Sprinklr to listen for a wide variety of things, including product and service feedback. It's a really important part of the social listening activities that we support. But there's so much that's possible with social listening. It's really important to me. I know it's really important to you too. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about the power of social listening.
Social listening has become essential for any brand. Depending on your budget, obviously, you have to do anything as basic as just tracking your brand at the most basic level, but something more robust like Sprinklr, I believe every brand absolutely needs. It's like back in the day before social media, you didn't know there was a problem until it came to your door. And now you have an opportunity to find out when something is about to trend or could be trending or becomes a common theme. And you can actually take part in de-escalating something before it goes wrong, before it goes completely wrong, which is wonderful. And the tools are only as good as the people who are using them, right? So we have to be engaged enough with the results and pay attention on a daily basis, if not, depending on the size of your company, an hourly basis, to make sure things are working well and have plans in place. If you know there's starts to become a common customer service issue that happens over the span of a day or two or a week, you can put plans in place to help streamline the customer service experience, both on social media. It's probably happening in real life if you have a physical location, online, wherever you have touch points with those customers. So social listening doesn't just apply to what is happening online. It's usually a vocal, either minority or majority, giving you insight that you wouldn't have otherwise that can impact every other area of your business.
That's fantastic. Can you talk a little bit more about the people side of that, or perhaps some of the processes that you've seen built around the people and the technology?
Let me give it to you from a PR perspective. This is one of the most simple but important examples that I found in the PR world. In the past, when I first started my career, for every launch, we might have a little guest popping in here, and I apologize. We're on our final 2 days of summer break.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
she might want to talk about social media too. This is some water in a coffee cup. We made something called FAQ guides, frequently asked questions, and that has to do with every campaign. This is a document that would be distributed to executive leadership, leadership, anybody who was part of that internal audience in preparation for questions that may come in from the media, from consumers, basically any stakeholder. And in those days, you were giving your best guess, right? Here's what I think customers will ask. Well, now my call to action to all PR people is use social media and social listening as a way to develop your FAQs before ever going live with any campaign. Now you don't have to have your best guess. You can actually seek feedback. You can look for questions. You can identify all these opportunities and now have a real FAQ guide developed from the ground up, from the front lines versus closed doors and internal.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's not just theoretical.
Yes.
Wonderful. It's great to have your special guest on. Well, we each brought a special guest
Yes.
on our respective sides of the camera.
Yeah, no need to one-up you there.
That's great. What is it about social listening and social media that you feel like is hardest for the companies that you're working with or that you see out trying to get started? What are some of the common pitfalls that you're running up against?
From a getting started perspective, it's usually the feeling of being overwhelmed. Someone said it, I'm trying to think, it was just a person that I work out with actually on a regular basis. She said, it's like if you were going into court and representing yourself versus hiring a lawyer. People try to go it alone at the beginning and they realize how overwhelming it is. Simply because when you get on social media and you realize all the places you need to be and you start to learn them, you realize you actually need a separate strategy for each one. Everyone is monitored differently. Everyone is engaged in differently. You have to upload native photos or videos. Everything has their own strategy. And behind that, you need to develop all of that messaging and content. And luckily, when you work with experts who work in the industry, they can come up with an editorial calendar, a strategy. I actually have a 3-part method that's very simple for creating content each day. It's creating one micro moment opportunity. This is something that you can just, pop in people's feeds. It could be a link to a live feed video. It could be a podcast. It can be a photo. One piece of content that you then find ways to repurpose in all of the different ways on all of the channels that you engage with. So if it's a podcast, taking an audio soundbite and creating a caption around it that you can use on Instagram along with a poll, something that engages people in a different way, and then tracking that content to see what performs well, and then adding that in more frequently to your editorial calendar on an ongoing basis. So just coming up with plans of action can be overwhelming. I guess all of those components are overwhelming, but there is a way to make it not so scary.
Oh, that's delightful. Can you give us an example of some of those micro moments you've created recently that brought you joy and inspiration?
Sure. I'm just going to go with the Women's Leadership Conference because it was so, it just happened. And I had an opportunity to, for the third year in a row, interview these amazing powerhouse women leaders. Unfortunately, I only get to sit on a stage for those 2 days in interviews, so I miss out on a lot of opportunities to hear the speakers live. So I have to use social listening to watch when they're speaking, and I formulate my questions. I'm so wrapped up in the work, I hate to do the interview, that then when I leave the conference, that's when I get to start promoting that. So I took all of the links to my videos and have taken time to pull screenshots from them. One of the first tactics that I used for a micro moment was to create a watch party on Facebook of one of the interviews after it had already gone live and ended. So that way I could engage with people real time as I would have loved to while I was actually doing the interview. So that would be one micro moment. Another is just to take a screenshot and tag the interview source in there, and then add my 3 to 5 lessons learned on other social networks, and then add opportunity for feedback in there. So I'll take each one of those pieces of content for weeks to come, and I'll actually get to do more with them and amplify them.
Wow, you did a live interview and then went back and convened a virtual watching party of yourself.
Is that narcissistic?
If it is, it's the best kind of. I don't think it is. No, I think it's metacognitive, perhaps.
Oh, that sounds way better.
Yeah. Oh, how cool! And what was that like to watch those videos with other folks?
Well, it was nice because I did it in my own Facebook feed, so it was mostly friends, acquaintances, family, so no one was going to say anything mean, but I asked them if they had any other questions or wanted to know more about the individuals I was interviewing. I also made fun of myself a little bit, to keep it real. And it was just another way to engage, and people gave some feedback during it, or they liked a specific question, or wanted to know more about a specific question. The best thing I can do is that I have access to these people, so if I don't have the answer, I can get them to someone who does.
Oh, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. Folks, if you have questions for Sarah or I, please feel free to post them in comments here. And as we move into some of the last few questions I want to ask Sarah, I want to make sure to invite you to join us next week as well, where I'm really excited about our next guest, Melinda Byerly. Melinda is an incredible Twitter user, a really smart person, and we're going to have a really thought-provoking conversation. So that'll be at the same time next week on Thursday. I hope you'll come and join us for that. So Sarah, you and I were talking about Melinda a little bit before the show and how great she is at Twitter. You're really good at Twitter too.
Oh, thank you.
Right? And can you talk to us a little bit about how you've done it, or how you relate to Twitter today, so that the rest of us can learn from your experience?
Sure. I think if you looked back at my Twitter experience, 10 years ago now, I would be mortified and embarrassed I was probably speaking in third person and giving very minute details and updates that had mean nothing now. So my style has completely changed. I want to be human. I don't mean to be too formulaic about how I do Twitter, but if you go in my feed, you'll see some very common themes with how I write now, and emoji is one of the biggest components to my style. So what I like to do, I'm a Will Ferrell fan, so if you've ever seen the movie Step Brothers, they always say, putting in the man hours so you don't have to. That's how I treat my Twitter feed. I love to recap and give insight in between new tools, research, ideas, concepts, articles. So I take anything that has to do with the digital PR or digital marketing industries and put things together for people. And I like to do it in a way that's engaging and makes people want to share. The other component that's worked really well, which I took a risk and put a little bit more of me out there. 2019 was a big year of reflection for me as I reached this 10-year milestone with my business. business. And one of my New Year's resolutions was to add in 10 minutes of reflective time each morning, reflecting on things I could do better, things that would make me a more whole person, a better mother, a better wife, a better friend, etc. So I've begun sharing those daily reflections in a Twitter-friendly format every morning. And I can't tell you the amount of camaraderie that I've built around those. Even if someone doesn't agree, it's fine. But I've engaged in more communication that way and have had people message me privately saying how much it's resonated with them. So it makes me feel good putting that out there to know people aren't alone. And then just general, obviously, promotion of my own services or doing fun interviews like this with you, anything that I'm working on personally, I can also share there because it's a built-in community, although I do that more sparingly.
That's great. You really are great using emojis.
Thank you. It's going on my resume.
Yeah, as it well should. Is there anything else, Sarah, that you are excited about in the world of social media that you'd like to share with the audience today?
Well, it's kind of self-promotion, but this actually grew out of a need for myself. Because I'm constantly remotely working and there are thousands and thousands of tools that exist in the PR workflow, I was building this tool for myself, essentially. It's this digital PR toolkit, and I decided to make it public. Nothing exists. If you research your brain off on Google to try to find some comprehensive, easy to access, always updated toolkit of just all of the tools you would use for a PR skill set, nothing easy exists. And I'm not saying I created it in the best format either, but this is what exists that I could make. It's a tool I've begun sharing now. So if any tactic or skill set that exists in the digital PR space is now organized in this toolkit that I created, and you can go down the list, whether it's social listening, whether it's amplification, press release distribution, research, monitoring, anything. I've got them all aggregated there, and they change on an ongoing basis based on what people are using. It is comprehensive, not exhaustive, even though it seems like there's a ton of tools there. But this is something I'm excited to keep promoting in the industry and encourage other people to do it better, organize it better, pull tools together to create common dashboards or things. Everything is just so fragmented outside of Sprinklr that is, an amazing tool. But when you work with so many different tools, it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, it really is a powerful resource that you put together. And another example of adding value through curation.
Yes, and it's free.
That's fantastic. Well, Sarah, it has been 10 years that since you have begun your business. We will soon be celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Sprinklr as well.
Awesome.
So here we are together, 10 years in.
We'll have to do a joint birthday party.
That sounds wonderful. Well, I am so glad that you have had the success that you have and built the wonderful platform that you have through continuing to share. And you share so much with so much value with your community. And I really appreciate what you shared with us today. I want to encourage folks who are watching to like this video and subscribe to the Sprinklr channel if you would. That's really helpful, and then you'll receive notifications of all of our upcoming other videos that the Sprinklr team puts together. We'd love to expand our family to include you. Come on over and hang out with us on the Sprinklr YouTube channel. Sarah, what is the best place for people to connect with you on an ongoing basis?
You can find me on Twitter at @PRSarahEvans. You can always email me PRSarahEvans@gmail.com. And my Twitter bio is actually my business card. So every way where you need to reach me is always there.
Fantastic. Your brand that you built is really awesome, and these pearls of wisdom you've shared with us today have been a lot of fun. I feel smarter, and I don't think it's just the coffee.
That's how I feel every time I talk to you, Marshall. No joke. You're one of the smartest people in the space.
Oh, that's so kind of you. I really appreciate that. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today on the Sprinklr Coffee Club. Please go and check out Sarah's work at PR Sarah Evans, and come back next week where we will have another episode of the Sprinklr Coffee Club.